On this second page, we are going to solve logarithmic equations. We are going to use all of our previous properties of logs in order to do this. You will have to use many different properties and they will all be different based on the problem we have. If you look at A, what we can first do is rewrite the equation in exponential form. If you recall, we can take the base of 6 to the power of -1 and set that equal to 2x minus 1. Once we do that, 6 to the -1 is the same as 1/6. We can then add 1 to both sides. And when you add 1 to both sides, 1 plus 1/6 is either 1 and 1/6 or 7/6 equals 2x. Once you do that, you can either divide by 2 or multiply by the reciprocal. And in this case, x is going to be 7/12. Let's try another example like that. If you look at letter B, the first thing we're going to do is rewrite it. So we're going to go 3 to the second equals 4x. So all we did was rewrite this in exponential form. 3 squared is 9. So we have 9 equals 4x. Then in order to solve for x, we just divide by 4, and x is going to equal 9/4. On other problems, we might have to do something else before we do that. If you recall, one of the properties of logs is if you have the same base and you are subtracting, you can then divide. So in this case, because they're both base 4, we can take and put these two together by making this 100 divided by x plus 1. Once we put those two pieces together, we can then rewrite it as 4 to the first equals 100 over x plus 1. If you recall from geometry, we can then cross multiply. So this 4 has a 1 underneath it. 1 times 100 is 100. 4 times x plus 1 is 4x plus 4. And then we can continue to solve the problem. We can then subtract 4. So we have 96 equals 4x. We can then divide by 4. And x is going to be 24. If we take a look at example D, this one's a little bit different. One of the properties of logs, whether it is ln, which is log base e, or just a regular log with the same bases, if they are on both sides, what you can do is you can then take and set the ln of each of them equal to each other. So in this case, because they both have an ln, we can just take x squared plus 3 and set it equal to 4. Once we have an x squared, there are multiple ways of solving it. The easiest way would be to subtract 3 from both sides. I have x squared equals 1, then square root each side, and x is going to be plus or minus 1. The next example is again similar to our previous examples. In this case, there's nothing to combine, so we would rewrite it as 5 to the 8th equals x to the 4th. We could punch out 5 to the 8th on our calculator, but we could make it easier and do it without a calculator by saying, how do we undo a 4th power? We bring it to the 1/4 power or the 4th root. When we do that, power of a power means we can multiply. 8 times 1/4 is 2, so our answer ends up being 5 squared, which in this case would be 25. On the next problem, we have multiple logs on the same side. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to use the property that says if I have a number out front, I can put that number on my power. So all I did is I moved the 3 up to the power of x. The next thing we learned is that when you are adding in between bases with common logs, we can multiply the two pieces together. After that, we know that this is base 10 because it's unwritten, so now we can rewrite the problem as 10 to the 3rd equals 8x to the 3rd. So it's always this base to that power equals what you are taking the log of. 10 to the 3rd is 1,000. Once we get that set up, we would then divide by 8. 1,000 divided by 8 is 125. And then to solve for x to the third, we would bring it to the 1/3 power, or take the cube root, and in this case, x is going to be 5. Last problem we are going to do is letter G. First thing we're going to do is rewrite. Our base is 8, so we have 8 to the 2/3 equals x squared minus 5. If this was a no calculator problem, we would have to break apart this 8 as 8 to the 1/3 squared. 8 to the 1/3 is 2. 2 squared is 4. And we just simplify that entire side without a calculator. We would then add 5 to both sides to solve. And we would have x squared equals 9. We would then square root both sides and get x equal to plus or minus 3.